Hey, Fail Females! So welcome back to another episode of Fail Film Friday. I'm sorry I haven't uploaded like the past 2 weeks. I've just been really going through stuff, and I've just been having these really long 10-hour shifts from work. And so then as far as the weekend's concerned, because my job is Monday through Friday, or I guess Monday through Thursday really. On the weekends I've just been hanging out with my fiance and just really been kind of taking care of myself until I've really just been feeling disencouraged lately. And so that's basically why I haven't been uploading the past 2 weeks. And so now that I'm back, I feel better. I think I definitely needed that break from YouTube because it was kind of burning me out a little bit. And so let's just go ahead and get started with our first case.
You had your fun, but you're sorry now. You dressed me in white to just lay me down. I would've stayed till death took me out, but then you fucked up and gave me the gun. So I'll give you one more shot.
And so, usually in these cases there's only one killer, but in this case there's actually three. Of course, because this is Fatal Crime Friday, we will start with our female killer. So, Jacqueline Annette Williams was born on December 22nd, 1966. She went by Annette, so we will be calling her Annette to make it easier for me because I don't know how to announce her actual God-given government first name. So, she will be Annette for the rest of the story. Annette had wanted a fourth child in order to keep her boyfriend, Fidel Caffey, but she couldn't have any more children because apparently her tubes were tied, and this was coming... the source that this came from was from a friend of hers. So she already had 3 children, not by Fidel, but she wanted to have a fourth one by him, but couldn't because tubes were tied. So remember that. And so Fidel, the boyfriend, was born on January 16th, 1973. He's important to the story as well. He wanted her to give him a child of his own because the 3 children she already had before him were not good enough. And so the pressure was on for her to have a baby, preferably one with light-colored skin, so that it looked like him, because Fidel was, I guess, what most people would consider light skin. And so she went as far as even to fake a pregnancy with a baby shower and even a fake birth certificate. How she did that, I have no idea. Around this time, she would come up with a plan to steal Deborah Evans' baby. Deborah Evans was a woman who actually was pregnant and apparently was about 8 months pregnant at the time. It was due to give birth around November 19th. And so a little bit about Deborah. Deborah Jo Evans was born on May 6, 1967. She would have a daughter, Samantha Jean Evans, who was born September 29th, 1985. Her first son, Joshua Ryan Evans, was born on March 21st, 1988. And so she ended up having a second son named Jordan, who was born, I guess, sometime in 1993. They didn't give the exact date. It does end up being a tragedy, as you can tell by the title. This does not end up a happy ending. And so it would all come to the plans that Fidel and Annette had together would eventually come to, and with another person, would come to fruition on November 16th, 1995. And so on that date, Fidel, Annette, and Laverne Ward would go to Deborah's house. And so Laverne Ward was born on September 21st, 1971. He is Fidel's cousin. And so Laverne had actually had a restraining order on him from an ex who he had a child with. He had broke the order and pushed an officer, he broke the restraining order and pushed an officer, resulting in 3 years in jail before being released in 1993, which is when he went around the time of conception for Jordan. So Laverne is the father of Jordan and the father of Elijah, who is the child that Deborah is currently carrying. And so once in the house, because somehow, despite Laverne and Deborah being exes, she let him in the house for some unknown reason. Fidel would shoot Deborah once inside before stabbing her to death in front of her 3 children. This was after allegedly offering $2,000 for the baby, to which she refused, because obviously she really wanted this baby. And so then afterwards, they would take Elijah Evans out of the womb with scissors. Annette would start doing mouth-to-mouth to the baby until it started breathing again. And so she had apparently washed him in the sink before dressing him up in a sleeper. Fidel and Laverne would kill Savannah by stabbing her due to her being a potential witness, because remember, she's 10 years old, so obviously a 10-year-old, you can identify people, especially at least Laverne, because Laverne and Deborah had been dating at one point. And so then they would take Joshua, who's a 2-year-old, and along with Elijah and Jordan, and so they would take Joshua, who was the second child, who was the oldest boy of Deborah's, and along with Elijah, the baby that they just cut out of Deborah's stomach, and Jordan, the 2-year-old, was left home alone, because I guess most 2-year-olds can't be a reliable witness. And so the bodies would sadly be later found by James Edwards, who was Deborah's current boyfriend at the time, when he came home from work around 2:30 a.m. He would obviously call the police because he just found out like this gruesome murders. And apparently, when he walked in, Jordan was like had some blood on him, and like came up to him. So that's how he went around the house trying to figure out what was going on. And so that's where he found the bodies. He would call the police, and James was actually surprisingly held on warrants unrelated to this case. So not for this, but apparently he had warrants for something else. So he was held like. And so they would eventually end up going to a friend's house named Patricia Scott. They, of course, claimed that the baby's mother had been shot and was in the hospital. So I guess the shot part was right, but she wasn't in the hospital. She was dead in her apartment along with her children. Well, as long as with her oldest child at least. But that she had given birth earlier that day, and that Patricia will eventually see the baby later. When most people that I know that have had a child, you would not be released out of the hospital that same day. It would be like maybe a couple of days to make sure you and the baby are okay, and then you would get discharged. But I guess there are some certain situations. And so Joshua had apparently actually told the friend, Patricia, what had actually happened and where Deborah actually was, that she wasn't shot in the hospital. They came in, like, I guess to rob them. Basically, he gave enough information to where the three, Laverne, Annette, and Fidel, were like, shoot, he's a witness too. We got to kill him as well. And so at this point, the murders have been made public. Like, it's all over the news. Like, it's like, because obviously it's like a triple brutal murder involving. It's like a triple. Okay, it's at this point it's a double homicide because Joshua is still alive and one child is missing. Well, actually, technically, two children are missing, Elijah and Joshua. And so somehow a tip would eventually come in to the police that Joshua was seen at Annette's house. So of course the police go over there. By the time they go over there, all three were gone. And so it's believed that during this time while the police are over at Annette's house, they were actually murdering Joshua and Maywood during this time, which sadly that's where Joshua is in fact found dead, and basically an alley in Maywood. So now it's considered a triple homicide. Fidel's cousins, who names I couldn't find, so there's going to be Fidel's cousins, would immediately say that he wasn't even there, that it was all Annette that did this. Laverne had also threatened an ex, saying the same thing that happened to Deborah would happen to her if she didn't break up with her current boyfriend. For what reason he did that, or even said that, I don't know. Remember, I said Joshua had been murdered at this point. They would later find his body. Sadly, he was poisoned, strangled, and had his throat cut by Annette and Fidel due to also being a witness, because he was 8 years old and apparently knew how to identify people. And so the trio was charged with 3 counts of murder and aggravated kidnapping. They all would get life without parole. Fidel and Laverne had death, like they were sentenced to death originally, but the former governor, George Ryan Sr., would commute all death row inmates in Illinois without parole on January 11, 2003. And from what I found, at least 13 of those inmates that were on death row around that time were actually said to have been wrongfully convicted. So him doing that, I guess, saved like those 13 people that were wrongly convicted. And so, when you know it, that same governor would actually spend 5 years in federal prison for corruption charges. Okay, there's very little information about her, but there's actually a 4-person named Vicky Iaculo, who was said to have been at the crime scene and even supplied the gun. There's not any information as to where she's at right now. So I would assume that she didn't get charged with anything, and that if she is still alive somehow, she's just living her best life. Elijah and Jordan, the survivors of this tragedy, they would go on to be raised by Deborah's father, Sam. Elijah would ask Sam not to disclose where they live or how they're doing. It is said that Elijah was teased regarding what happened to his family, sadly. He also had anger issues that resulted in physical fights. Sam would luckily help him control his anger. And so, Annette's 3 children probably went where they went. They went under the custody of the state, since apparently they were all underage at the time this happened. In 2012, Jacqueline would request to be released from prison after she felt that she did enough time and claimed to did a complete 180 on her life. Luckily, it was denied. She would even ask to be reunited with her 3 children, who are all now adults because this happened in 1995, and her 6 grandchildren. That, from what I saw, apparently that was denied as well because she's still in prison. Fidel would appeal, but this was rejected by the Illinois Supreme Court. And so, yeah, that was the case of the Evans murders in Addison, Illinois. And so yeah, while this is a very tragic case, it was a pretty well known case. I think if you knew anyone, there's a couple other YouTube videos on this case on YouTube, but they're like an hour and a half long. It's like a podcast, and so I would like to think I covered this case in like less than 15, but I'm not going to give them any discredit. So of course, all my sources down below. If you have any case recommendations similar regarding fetal abductions, I guess that's the technical term, or even just female murders in general, don't be scared. Comment down below. Like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you fellas in the next one. Bye.
You wanna just